a Ghanatube so modofo snow we masai so atena se aja konwa fefefe na ebusiafo se nya matena se de no se nsem ahodo bi enkoso ewo oman na intem pass no ye bekwa kutie ne ahwe nsem bi a enkoso ewo oman Ghana.
Out is good news for Ghana because we were in really dire times a short few years back. Currently, we are talking about an upgrade to B-, which is great news for those of us in watching the economy. We're feeling it in our pockets over the last few years, but also for the government as far as an ability to go back into the market is concerned. This is, are you credit worthy? For example, it is a very important question. Every government, including the United States, they borrow. You have to go out there and look for people who want to give you money. And your credit worthiness is a very important consideration for investors who have money to give out. If they actually assess you and come to the conclusion that it's risky to give you money, it's going to cost you far more. And that is where we've been for a long time. And that is where ratings such as you have there in the background is absolutely important, because we cannot, we've shown over the years, just live on what we earn locally through the taxes, etc. We often have to go to the international markets and get borrow. We've been locked out from the international capital market for a while. This, I guess, is the first indication yet that we can begin to look forward to going back into the international capital market. Or is it? I'm going to ask my guests to weigh in on that, about what this means. We are stable. What does that really mean? The word tells a story by itself. How do you keep that stable? But this for me was a fascinating thing, because if you look at Fitch and the downgrades that we've had all the way down, if you look at the years from B to, we stayed at B a bit, and then we came to B minus, triple C, CCC, RD. I mean, we had dropped to the lowest ebb, but in one stroke, we go all the way to B minus. Now, if you look closely on your screen, you will notice that we have actually skipped 3 different ratings levels all the way to B plus. Something fundamentally is happening that explains this significant leap, because you probably expect, as other things will explain, that you possibly have to come to C first and then do a climb to double C and then triple C before you get to B minus. But we are straight up to B minus. That is good news. But what is explaining this? We'll get my guests to weigh in. For example, the question of what is attributing, what are the factors for this particular leap is obvious, because if you read the report, it says a few things. I just want to summarize the top 4 for you. There's also the question about declining debt levels, which is important. We've seen that projections say we can't actually beat our debt to GDP ratio under the IMF program way before the prescribed date. Sustained build-up in international reserves is a great one. I'll look at the numbers, specifics very shortly. The debt restructuring is currently near completion. The previous government did great work there. This government had continued it. Inflation we've seen is on the decline. So all these have helped. And some of the specifics, just to look at to confirm for you, 54.1%, talking about inflation, is where we were. Scary, dizzying heights in 2022, just on the back of the COVID and everything else that was happening in the world at the time. We're now currently talking about 18.4%. So that is good, right? Part of the reason why we're where we are with the ratings. And then you look at your very important question about the gross international reserves, where we were in 2022 of $6.25 billion. We are now currently at $10.67 billion. Again, very important. And when this levels start drop, that's when governments begin to really worry. Your creditors will look at that also, and that will tighten up how much it's going to cost you to borrow. Debt to GDP, and another one that everybody else is watching very closely, used to be at 77.5, is currently at 55%. So that again is great news for the economy. Now, the key questions around some of the issues that we know, and we've dealt with this over the period here on PM Express, the subject of the CD miracle, the public debt slashed, as we see, by 150, and then you look at the Ghana's external financing gap, which, as you see there, is currently also post-restructuring compared to the pre-restructuring era. It's also doing pretty well. So a lot of the indicators are trending in the positive. But then you look at the ratings over the period in 2022, 2023, all three major ratings agencies are downgraded us, right? And it was terrible at the time. I will show you what the previous government said at the time when this happened because of its potential to collapse this economy. Now we're seeing over the last few months that all three are back, giving us upgrades. Of course, the steepest, the most positive, the boldest of them all is the Fitch one we are talking about right now. But we've seen S&P also give us a triple C+, and then we've seen Moody's at CAA2. So this is obviously a good one. The key question I need to ask, because tonight I'm delighted that we'll be joined by the director at Fitch, Sovereign Ratings, responsible for Middle East and Africa, himself is on the show. What is your own projections going forward? Are we going to see further upgrades, possibly in the highs of the Bs, which is absolutely important? That was something we need to watch. Now, at the time when this was happening in 2022, 2023, we know that the government then began to fight the ratings agency. So Kenneth Riata himself at the time made this profound statement that it's time for Africa to have its own credit ratings agency, because what they said had a potential impact on your pocket, on the survival of this economy. The president himself was also very vociferous about that same subject. The difficulties in the economy were exacerbated by the reckless behavior of rating agencies that engaged in downgrade, shutting Ghana out of the capital market, and that has been a reality since then, right? So the previous government weren't happy. But the thing about ratings agencies I have noticed as far as the political space is concerned is when they begin to upgrade you, the government seems to be very, very happy. When they begin to downgrade you, you see a bit of concern expressed, as you saw with the presidents then. The key question now remains, yes, we are doing great. We've been upgraded. We need to sustain that. There are few things in the Fitch report, though, that actually gives indication that they have confidence, for example, that the primary surplus can be maintained over time. That is good. Many have looked at that, and the discipline that this current government has shown in the last few months, the finance minister obviously at the helm of that. Many look at him play on his name and say Atto is forcing. Key question is, how do you sustain this over time, right? So that this autonomics, if you like, begin to become something that is settled, even during an election period. We wait to see. But then you look at the projection as far as our return to the capital market that the IMF itself told us. So by estimates, we can't go to the international market. By IMF own estimate, not even this year, not even next year, 2027. But the government is very ambitious that they're looking to do so sometime later this year, and this obviously could pave the way for that. This upgrade could pave the way for that. The IMF says, for example, that they expect that 1 billion could be open to us in the international capital market in 2027, 2028, 1 billion now also in 2029 there, but other creditors could give us money way before that, right? And that there is also good news if you read the IMF reports. Now, how does it really work? You have the government on one side, you have the creditors on the other side. They have money, the government needs the money. So how do I determine who to give my money to? I have to go and open the Fitch document and check how are they rating Ghana. Okay, then if they do rate you positively and strongly, like a B minus, B plus, AAA, thereabout, then I'm deciding less risk associated with you, then maybe I can give you money. But if I see that is far more risky, I'm going to charge you far more, a head, a leg, a tail, an eye, just to give you that money. So the ratings agencies are absolutely critical to the survival of most economies, and no wonder you saw the president there raise questions in the previous administration. But the big question we must ask, can the momentum be sustained? But fundamentally, what does this mean for you? My guest will join me, and I'm looking forward to the authors of this particular report, the director of Middle East and Africa, Sovereign Ratings at Fitch himself is my guest. I'm also joined in the studio by Thomas Darrell, who is the director, Middle East and Africa, Sovereign Ratings at Fitch. I'm grateful that he can join me. He joins us via Zoom Thomas, thank you very much for agreeing to speak to us. And Sharif Mahmood Khalid is the Economic Policy Advisor at the Vice President's Office and is with me in the studio. I want to start with you, Thomas, if you don't mind, because you authored this particular report, a very important one in this for us. But in simple language, B minus, what does that mean?
Thank you very much for the invitation. Well, first of all, I think it's important to emphasize that we decided to move Ghana out of default on this specific time based on our assessment that Ghana has normalized relations with a significant majority of creditors, of commercial creditors. Then we decided to upgrade from default from RD to, as you said, B minus. This shows that there are still some weaknesses in Ghana's credit profile with some liquidity pressures that we still consider as being pretty much high. Typically, the interest to revenue ratio would be about 25 to 26% in 2025 and 2026. So that means that for any CD that the government raises in revenue, it spends 25 cents in interest payments, which is still high compared to its peers. Other weaknesses that we have identified, typically in public finance management, Ghana has a record of weak public finance management that, concretely speaking, means that in election years, Ghana has a record of fiscal slippages. So these weaknesses that we have identified still weigh together with other structural factors like relatively low GDP per capita. So these weaknesses still weigh on the rating of Ghana. So that's why we decided to assign Ghana a B minus rating again. This is a significant step for Ghana being moved out of default.
And I noticed when I was explaining what you've done, we were at RD and we're falling all the way from B, maintained B, and it came to B plus, CC, triple C, double CC, and RD. But we've jumped all the way from RD all the way to B plus. If you're reading into that we are on the path to recovery is now setting and opens the door to return to the capital markets, would that be a fair conclusion to reach?
Well, not exactly. What that means is that we do not identify a path to default. When you are rated in the triple T and below range, that means that we, as a rating agency, do identify a credible and potentially rapid path to default. This is no longer the case in Ghana following the restructuring of the external debt that is still ongoing, but also following the restructuring of domestic debt in 2023 with the domestic debt exchange program. So given that we do not identify this credible path to default, and given that Ghana has, I mentioned the weaknesses, but Ghana also has some strengths in terms of rating. This is why we decided to assign a B minus. Then, whether we do consider that Ghana will tomorrow get back to the international capital market, that's not the case. As long as Ghana is under the existing IMF program, Ghana will not issue on international capital markets, basically because of the conditions that are attached to the existing IMF program. But your initial presentation, you showed that potentially Ghana could get back to the international capital market in 2027. That's a possibility. The IMF program will be over. It's up to the administration of Ghana to decide whether it wants to extend the existing program, whether it wants a successor program. But technically speaking, Ghana could issue in 2027.
Okay, so that.
Yo, me na masese mo je asopa na mutie na afin so mo tan ehwe fa comment ebra comment section na menkinkan emfa mo fefefe aha eye Ghanatube so mo dofo snowy ene de ensem ne ebrem on subscribe ya subscribe na afin so fa onsa emi notification bell no se ne be a se me de ensem ne tuma na onya ne intem pa so sisi ade makram.